Welcome to the Creepin' It Real Show, your one-stop shop for weird news, spooky, otherworldly, and paranormal shenanigans. We'll take a dive into what's going on in creepy pop culture. You can follow us on Twitter at creepin_it and like us on Facebook at The Creepin' It Real Show. Do you have a paranormal story you'd like to share with us? You can email us at creepinitrealshow@gmail.com.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever the time o' day is that you're listening to the Creepin' It Real Show. I will be the host this week, Christy, and with me is my dynamic duo of funniness and wittiness. Yardley, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. The weather finally snuck back this weekend, so it's kind of chilly. Outside of that, everything's fine.
I read this meme this morning from a Georgia parody account, and it said something like, Georgia went from 70 to 30 like it just saw a state trooper or something like that. It was funny.
Yeah, it's a huge turnaround in temperature, but it's not. Actually, I'm looking out the window, and I guess it rained as well.
I wasn't paying much attention to all these crazy temperature fluctuations, and I go to work so early, it's still cold regardless of what the day's bringing you, and I dressed all wintry, and then I walk outside, and of course it's like 75 degrees outside, so I'm peeling off all my clothing. So then the next morning I get up and I dress all, somewhat springy, and it was like 40 degrees when I got out of the office. I'm like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, that's one of the main reasons why everybody's around sick, apparently.
Oh, everybody's sick here. It's crazy.
It's
that, and I honestly do think it's because the frickin' million-plus people that bombarded our town for Super Bowl, bringing all their dirty-ass germs, too. So that, plus all the shitty weather, is not a good combination. So, but somebody coming from something that's always has wonderful weather. Moni, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm one of the people that has one of the illnesses that's going around. I caught myself a nice cold. And actually out here, it's in the 30s, which is really rare for us, and we're expecting rain today. So it is slightly, probably improbable, but possible that we could get a little bit of snow, which never happens, but it did 3 years ago.
Wow.
It was the first time in recorded history we had snow out here in Temecula, but we're getting down to those temperatures. And also people are being reminded why we love SoCal so much. You can go onto the beach right this minute. It's cold, but it's super clear and sunny. And then you can see the snow-capped mountains just behind the beach, and it looks fake. It's amazing out here right now.
Wow. Yeah, we don't get that here, but hey, what you gonna do? So I guess we'll just move on over to our weird news. Yardley, as always, is bringing all kinds of good pop culture of what's happening with movies and everything, and I love it because you keep me updated. I never check on this stuff, and then I sit down and get all caught up whenever you post everything. So what do we got for this week?
Yeah, it's just a follow-up on some things that we had already talked about. So they finally dropped the Child's Play 2019 trailer. I'm going to make the assumption that both of you have seen that trailer at this point, right?
I just watched it.
We did our homework.
Yes, I watched it.
Yeah. And well, you know what? First, let's just give our thoughts on it. I thought it was cool. They didn't show a lot. It was only a minute, so I'm making the assumption that this was probably more of a teaser and that there'll probably be something a little bit more extensive coming out. But the cool thing about it is that they only showed silhouettes of the doll. Mm-hmm. They showed it, I think, twice in the trailer. And it's kind of funny. I thought it was effective. I'm kind of happy they didn't go all in this teaser. But from what you saw, is this something that's interesting? And also, they've got pretty good viral marketing going for this.
Saw that. Yeah,
because they've got the Caslin Corp website, which kind of talks about the technologies that they're developing, which of course is going to come into play. But some of the things that they actually showed in the trailer and in these viral campaigns is that this particular Buddy doll, and they will call it Chucky, has facial recognition, wireless capability, different sensors, and something that they're really playing up is how adaptive it is to its environment. So I think all of these things are definitely going to be things that this terror of a AI type Chucky doll. I'm pretty sure it's going to use all of those technologies to wreak havoc. But I thought the trailer was solid. How'd y'all feel about it?
I'm excited about it. It kind of reminds me, and I guess we're at that point that this could go for just about any story these days. Kind of reminds me of a Black Mirror episode paired with Chucky, because it's just another example of how, technology can come back to bite you on the ass. So I liked the first Chucky movie. I really did. But after all the ridiculousness that came after it, that I just had a bad taste in my mouth for Child's Play franchise overall. This could possibly redeem me. We'll see. I have a cautious excitement about it.
What about you, Moni?
I hope that it's rated R. I like the trailer. I'm on the fence about not having seen Chucky. I'm curious if the technology is going to show in how he actually looks or not. And yeah, I do hope it's rated R, because the trailer makes it look almost Saw-esque, the way that they have his mom tied up and about to get like beheaded or whatever else is happening to her. So I'm like, oh, they better not do some like PG-13, like pulling punches, lame shit. So we'll see.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that it'll probably be rated R, but this adaptation, Christy, you don't even have to worry, because it's not connected to any of the other Chucky movies. Because remember, we were talking about Don Mancini having some type of way about the property that he sold the rights to. The people who bought it actually saying, "Hey, we're going to try to make money off of it."
We're actually going to try to make money off of this, so we're going to make it good.
Exactly. I mean, you could see a bunch of people who were in a room and they were actually looking at the returns for all of these movies, and I don't blame them, especially with the success of Halloween. This movie, I think worldwide, Halloween ended up making 2019, ended up making like 253 million, which is pretty good, because I think they only spent maybe 10 or something like that on it, which was great. And then you had It come out and kill it with 700 million worldwide. And if you added up all of the Chucky movies with the adjusted numbers combined, all of these Chucky movies made 252 million. And I can sit here and tell you now, the success of like Halloween and the success of It, this new Chucky movie, and a lot of people might not want to believe this, there are going to be people who've never seen a Chucky movie or anything associated with this franchise. This might be their first time. And I totally believe that they can beat this movie, could make more than all of the Chucky movies combined in like a couple of months, a month or so. And Jennifer Tilly came out throwing shade, and I was like, this is not my Chucky. And I'm like, if this movie kills it in the theater, they'll be saying, you're right. It's not your Chucky.
Yeah, she better be careful with that, because if they ever choose to bring up Bride of Chucky again in a better way, it sucked and it was stupid, when she was in it, throwing shade like that, you're not going to get approached, and she has a great voice.
Like, I didn't really, I didn't know what it was when that happened, but now I feel better about it.
Well, I don't even think that this franchise, if it does well, I don't think that they'll go there, because
I hope not.
Bride of Chucky is one of the reasons, for the people who say they like it, there's two other people who said that they don't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and then the Seed of Chucky. I mean, come on.
Yeah, but actually, The Bride, in its defense, was the most lucrative Chucky movie. That movie made around $50 million. But that's just one of those deals where I've never felt, and I've said it on here before, if there's any franchise where people should be running out the house saying, oh my God, don't mess with it, it ain't Chucky. You know what I mean? Chucky is total fertile ground, because most of those movies have been a hot mess. And I just don't, for me, I'm happy that they're doing it. And I do, my gut's telling me that this is going to be fairly successful and definitely will make more money than the most lucrative Chucky movie.
Well, I mean, if you are going to remake a movie from the 80s, theoretically, Chucky is the best choice, because you can tie all the technology and stuff that we have now into the story, because with exactly like what they're doing. It is it. Like, there's not a lot you're going to change as far as updating. I mean, yes, you'll update it with better effects and all that, but like as far as the story, you're not really, I mean, you're just not going to see a lot of different changes for technology. And then Halloween, kind of the same thing. There wasn't a lot of like, oh, now we're doing this because it's 2018. Chucky, there's like a whole world of things you can introduce to this because it is, you can add the technology factor in there and make it modern. So I'm curious to see. I mean, and I like the direction they seem to be going. So it makes more sense for today instead of like a possessed doll. That this one actually the technology ruined him instead of a killer or murderer or whatever. So yeah, I'm curious.
What do you think is a positive or a negative that they've said that they're going to use a combination of practical and CGI enhancement, or would you rather them just go full blown, roll your eyes, just puppet? I like it. You have to use technology. It's 2019.
I think
so. Especially if he's going to be kind of a technology based, how he did the retinal scan of the kid and stuff like that. Like they're going to have to use a little bit of both. But I'm glad there's going to be some practical effects. I'm glad they're not just like, we're just going to have CGI everything and the actors are going to have to react to nothing and we're going to be all green screen. So I think that's probably the best choice for what they're trying to do.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk about another trailer really quick. Pet Sematary had their full trailer, which also released. It was actually the day before the Child's Play trailer, and there's a little bit of a buzz going on about a certain change that people noticed when the trailer came out. So basically, in this take on the classic story, it's the young daughter Ellie who was killed and then resurrected, not the Creed's family youngest child, the 3-year-old Gage.
Yeah, that surprised me.
Yeah, and well, the reasoning behind it, they were saying that Gage is so young, you can't really do that much with the character, and they were saying basically with them switching it out, they'll be able to really get underneath how these things, of an affected child, basically. Right, and they were saying we're able to get into the psychological horror of a child coming back because of that age change. I think that that's reasonable. And quite frankly, there's a lot of rope with this. Look, most people aren't readers like that. The overwhelming majority of people go to see this movie probably won't have read the book. They're probably familiar with it from the last, installment that came out a while ago. But I don't think that people should cater for a project like this too much, worrying about, a blowback from people who have read the novel, because, most of the box office probably comes from people who aren't fully familiar with the source material.
Yeah, I agree. I love me some Stephen King, so I get very possessive over people trying to take his stuff and turning into movies. We've seen that it is possible to have a success with it. They did an amazing job with it. So I am hoping that this trend continues, because the psychological terror that you feel when you're reading his stories is so hard to put on the screen. And it appears that we've got some really fucked up minds in the movie business that can finally do that. And I am all for it. So from reading, I just watched the new trailers that you posted, and I didn't read your description to find out that Ellie is actually the one that ends up being resurrected. And I found that, that's very interesting, because the way in the trailer, the mom, when the truck drives by, she's got Gage and she's holding Gage closely, like usually that's foreshadowing, because he's supposed to die. And so now you find out that's not the case. They're kind of pulling a little switcheroo, and I think that's great for people that have seen the other film, for that being caught off guard, like, oh, what? Like, that would be kind of a cool way to play on the people that have actually know the story.
Yeah. And to my mind, there's two schools of thought. I really actually like the idea that they want to explore the psyche of a slightly older child, because obviously someone who is a toddler is not going to be able to tell you really that much about what their experience is like. On the other hand, and I think I felt this way even when I was younger, wasn't a mom yet. So it's not like, oh, she's a mom, that's why. But there's something obviously very fragile about someone who's a toddler that you just want to protect. That makes it, I feel like, and maybe this is cold because a kid is a kid, but even more heartbreaking that someone that little is dead and is now coming back and is confused and scared, and you're trying to like protect this thing, but it's not really what you think it is,
Yeah.
So,
and then like the creepiness of this an outright evil toddler. I mean, that we all know toddlers can be evil because they're toddlers, but literally something that wants to kill you is pretty fucking creepy.
Because I feel like almost anybody, even non-parents, like your inclination when you see a struggling like little person who doesn't have their parent around, you're like, oh, I want to help protect this person. Whereas a kid, you might be like, yeah, kick rocks, kid. Like, you never know.
Yeah.
So
you've had your day in the sun.
A little tiny person that's like, help me, and then you get close and then they stab you. That's pretty creepy.
Yeah. We'll see.
So-
I mean, I think it could go. I think I agree with you. It could go either way. We get to see now what an older child can communicate, and I think as you kind of get older, also you have that inclination of being able to manipulate a little bit better. You're smarter. So I know that's not her really anyway, but it will be an interesting twist.
Yeah, for sure.
When's the last time either of you saw, the other Pet Sematary movie? I can't even remember what year they came out. I was trying to Google it, but
oh my God, Slumber Party days from like the 90s when I was a teenager, a tween.
Yeah, it was actually on. It was on regular, television.
Yeah, I turned it on.
Ago.
I started it. I started watching it. It's probably a few months ago when we first started talking about that they were redoing it. It just happened to be in like my list of movies I can watch for free, and I was like, okay. And
it's 1989, by the way.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I think I fell asleep. Like I knew what was coming. It just the overall feeling of that movie is so cheesy. I just can't get into
that cat. Looks like shit.
Yeah,
the cat in it just like a total puppet cat with lantern eyes. It's ridiculous.
I was kind of like, and that's just because I remember watching the movie when I was young. I started reading Stephen King books when I was in middle school, so I had already read this book, and so I was excited, and I remember not feeling disappointed by the movie. I think I was creeped out a little bit about what they did, but nowadays that's just that quality and that type of storytelling in movies doesn't cut it anymore. It's just not. I mean, that's Sci-Fi Channel.
Exactly. It doesn't hold up.
Yeah. And so I tried.
Yeah. I was kind of the same way. I was in and out of looking at, but overall, I thought that the trailer was great. And there is something about someone getting their Achilles sliced that always makes me, that always makes me like, my goodness. So, all right. Well, I'm glad everybody enjoyed those. And those are actually two movies that we're going to have to check out and review on the show. So with that being said, I'm going to pass the baton.
Moni, I'm not even going to I'm going to let you make the description on your weird news choice for this week.
So this is all you really need to know, but the picture really, speaks volumes.
God.
Woman makes bizarre pubic hair dress with crotch donations from strangers. So we've all heard of styling your pubic hair, but this is bizarre. Fashion is ever evolving, blah, 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 blah. One woman, Sarah Bryan, is pushing these limits even further by creating unique dresses made from bizarre materials, including her latest dress, which is made completely of human pubic hair. Okay, so questions I have about this.
I'm sorry. I just saw the picture with the guy and the girl, and the guy's like, oh my God.
Well, and even if there was some way that this dress could be, it's not going to be attractive. However, it's a bikini dress, which is just like, it's kind of tacky, even if it weren't made of pubic hair. Oh God, it makes me want to gag just looking at it. It's different. Obviously, not everyone has the same color of pubic hair, so it's all different colors. Yes, the poor guy in the photo is back far enough that it doesn't touch him, which I don't blame him.
And the look on his face, he's like, ew.
Yeah. I kind of wonder what her process is for washing this, if there was one at all.
There's no way, unless you shampoo.
I would imagine there's quite an odor to this. Even if you did wash it, it would stay wet and
gagging right now. Oh, Jesus. Yeah. Okay. I didn't even think about the odor piece, and then you said that, and I'm like, oh, Jesus, no.
Well, and it's textured, obviously, because it's got all different, it's really gross, you guys. It's on our Facebook page. Check it out, or don't. Spare yourself.
I don't think you should. The crazier.
I don't know if I wonder more about the woman who made this dress, or if I wonder more about the people who sent her their donation.
And she's like touching it. Like, hello,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
look at me. I have a skirt of pubic hair. And the creepiest part is when you look on the bra, there's some of that pubic hair is really long. And I'm like, good God.
Swirling around her nipples.
Yes.
It's so gross.
Who did that?
And like I said, it's tacky. I mean, I wouldn't wear a dress like that if it was made of diamonds. Like, it's just the two-piece, I mean, with like just the bikini bra, basically, and then like your whole midriff showing for a formal dance.
It's got to be a mixture of pubic hair and real hair, because nobody's pubic hair is that long around the, the bosom area. But yeah, you're right.
I don't know.
I just don't. I mean, you know what? I'm not going to ever, you know what? I just saw a lady in the Guinness Book of World Records who had those long fingernails. So, you know what? Let me not say that someone can't grow their pubic hair that long.
I'm digging the other dresses that she made. I think they're cute. Yeah. Like the Skittles one. Now that's kind of cool. I can get behind that. And then she's got this other one.
There.
Yeah. But what? Pubic hair? Like, you've taken it to a point that is just like gross.
Yeah, that's not good. You can't even burn that when you're done. How do you dispose of a dress like that?
Throw it away, flush it down the toilet.
Like, there's nothing
I don't know.
That's gonna make that dress die. It's gonna have rats living in it in the waste when you send it to the dump. Like, it's gross.
It's disgusting. I feel itchy and gross and nauseous all over just watching her touch it and wear it.
Her date puts his arms around her and is just like, oh God.
What if she wore that dress in Georgia in July and gets all sweaty?
God. Oh God.
Oh, God.
And on that note.
Yeah, because when you're in Georgia in the summer, you walk outside for 10 minutes and you feel like you've been in the shower. It's so humid here that you cannot. Yeah, it's disgusting. It is awful.
She would be walking around Peachtree Street smelling like earring backs and asshole.
Oh God. Gagging. Okay, can we move on now?
Yes.
Thank God. My eyes are watering.
I don't have to look at it either.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay. Well, Valentine's Day is around the corner.
So get your pubic donations now to make dresses for your loved one. Anyway.
No. If you do not have a loved one and are kind of salty due to a ex breaking your heart, there's actually something for you that you can do. A zoo in El Paso, Texas, will name a cockroach after your ex and then feed it to meerkats on live video. And the response has been massive, and not a shock there. The lady who agreed on it said that she did not know it would go as big as it did. We thought maybe in El Paso, that's it, but it's like worldwide, and they're kind of cracking up. These meerkats are going to be fat and happy, let me just tell you. She said they're doing an interview with her and on this article, but we don't need to go through it. I just think it's fucking hysterical that that so many people have been like, okay, and have agreed to do it. I will be one to view the video. I will enjoy watching, even though I have not feeding an egg. Maybe if I put an enemy on one of the cockroaches and watch it eat it would be kind of satisfying. But I don't have any issues with any of my exes. But you guys want to get down with that? You got anybody you want to name a cockroach after?
I'd rather feed an enemy. Yeah, that sounds good.
I mean, if it's to that point, I'd probably rather just stomp on the cockroach myself, if that's the case.
Get a cockroach? I will name you Heather, and then stomp on it and be like, yes, moving on with my life now. I guess that can be the new, instead of burning their shit, it's now name a cockroach after them and murder them.
There you go. I love it. It's very Game of Thrones with meerkats and roaches.
Right. Oh, anyway. All right. So we're going to get to the meat of the show, the meat and potatoes. I don't know what I'm talking about. I've had hardly any sleep, so you're just going to have to excuse me. My brain is melted from being in classes, and I'm usually take my weekends and do absolutely nothing. And so having to go to school on a weekend is very, very foreign to me, and not and it does not make me happy. But the content was fantastic, and I had a great time. It's just the whole I didn't get my lazy day. But anyway, so we're going to talk about this week Locusta, the poisoner of Rome. She's the world's first recorded serial killer that we know. I mean, I haven't looked at other countries to know if I'm sure there's something out there. So I apologize. I don't want to say she is absolutely, but in these news stories, she is marked as one of the world's first recorded serial killers. My sources are from Wikipedia, badassoftheweek.com, because she's pretty fucking badass, and the India Times. And I included, so this is kind of surprising to me, and I knew that the Roman Empire wasn't just like Italy at the time, but I had no idea how big it was back then. Roman Empire was huge. I mean, they just basically... I mean, you see Italy in the middle of the map, and basically everything around it was taken, and they conquered. So interesting how the map today is just Italy, with Rome, and then back then, I mean, all this land that they had conquered is pretty impressive. The story, we're going to do a little bit of backstory here, so you can kind of understand who the players are and how she ended up getting away with what she did. She was smart somewhat if she was going to do these things, and got involved with the right people who allowed her to all the those years to kill the thousands that she did. It started, we're going to start with about 47 CE, which is CE stands for Common Era, which is basically AD. So if you are a Jesus follower, it's AD. If you're just a science person, it's CE. This starts in the reign of Claudius, who was Nero's father. Claudius was a Roman empire from 41 to 54 CE, and the first emperor installed by the military, not the Senate, which is interesting. But if you ever want to know more about this period, there is a documentary on PBS that I highly recommend, and it goes through kind of the befores of this, and then this period, and then afters of the Roman Empire and all its emperors, and it's pretty interesting. So definitely recommend. After the death of Emperor Caligula and his family at the hands of the, I'm going to murder these words, I apologize, Praetorian Guard, the future Emperor Claudius was found quivering behind a set of curtains, fearing for his own life, and named emperor. Historian Claudius Dio wrote, "At first the soldiers, supposing that he was someone else or perhaps had something worth taking, dragged him forth, and then on recognizing him, they hailed him as emperor and conducted him to the camp." So they thought at first he was somebody else because, what kind of future emperor is, quivering in a corner? And then whenever they realized who he was, they thought, oh, maybe he's protecting something or somebody. And no, it was just him. So interesting start to his reign of Rome. Afterwards, they, together with their comrades, entrusted him to the supreme power, which is hysterical. So this is the first time military has ever named an emperor, and this is the guy they chose. According to the 12 Caesars, ancient historian, here we go, Suetonius said Claudius's mother, Antonia, daughter of Mark Antony, considered her son a monster, a man whom Mother Nature had begun work upon, but then flung aside. Which is pretty brutal as a mom. When she accused someone of being stupid, she would say, "He's a bigger fool even than my son Claudius." So this is the emperor, now the new emperor of Rome. His grandmother Livia could not bear to look him in the face. When it was predicted that Claudius would rule the empire, she prayed aloud that the Roman people might be spared so cruel and undeserved a misfortune.
So later in life, Claudius explained his feeble-mindedness as an act. It's the Jessica Simpson approach, y'all. There's a chicken fish. According to Suetonius, instead of keeping quiet about his stupidity, Claudius explained in a few short speeches that it had been a mere mask assumed for the benefit of Caligula, and that he owed both life and throne to it. What began as a joke of a reign has gone down as one of the greatest in Roman Empire. I'm seeing some parallels to our current climate, but I'm not going to go there. Claudius treated the Senate with immense respect, allowed them the power to issue their own coins, and remodeled them into a more efficient body to represent the people. He brought relative peace to Rome with the restoration of rule and law. He built a new harbor at Ostia, established an imperial civic service, and brought about agrarian reform. He expanded the empire further into the Middle East and the Balkans. Lastly, he completed the conquest of Mauritania begun by Caligula. Claudius reformed the financial affairs of the state and empire, creating a separate fund for the empire's private household expenses. Due to the fact that almost all grain had been imported, mainly from Africa and Egypt, Claudius offered insurances against losses on the open sea to encourage potential importers and to build up stocks against the winter times of famine. It's actually pretty smart stuff. Yeah. He also instituted judicial reforms, creating, in particular, legal safeguards for the weak and defenseless.
So real quick, he actually, what started out as, and this is very well possible, because back then, if you weren't really fond of the person that was going to follow you, you would murder them. And lots of murdering going on back then. And so he says that he's claiming to have been a feeble mind, so that he was looked at as harmless, basically, to get slipped through the cracks. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. But the Senate was outraged when the military issued him, or, sent him in as emperor, and he immediately, calmed them down by letting them kind of handle things that they wanted. So he ended up being, when you look at the before and afters of emperors, he actually caused and created a very rare peace, because they were always at war, claiming other land and people. And after he finished up what little bit Caligula had tried to get, he was basically like, we got enough. Like, we got enough land. We don't need, let's stop and just focus on the people. And so he ended up being, and they've said, one of the greatest emperors of Rome, even though, he didn't have a very good start.
Yeah, so regardless of if it was a facade or not, I think the proof is in the pudding to what the person was doing. So I think if it was a facade, it just makes him look a little bit better. But Claudius was also horribly paranoid and executed close to 800 people in his government and their families. He was married 4 times, the last being Agrippina. His marriage to Agrippina was something he regretted shortly after exchanging vows, for it was also disastrous. Both ancient and modern sources describe Agrippina's personality as ruthless, ambitious, violent, and domineering. Physically, she was a beautiful and reputable woman. The manipulative Agrippina, who was also his niece, was intent on having her son Nero named the next emperor. Claudius fulfilled her wish and adopted Nero. He then became the next in line for the throne. Here enters Locusta.
So, Claudius thinking, okay, if I adopt Nero, my life won't be like. He thought that would make her happy, and like he could finish his reign and die, an old man, and Nero would step in when he dies. But she wasn't having that. There's a lot of stories about this lady, and a lot of people admire her because she was another pretty big fucking badass, but she was also highly manipulative and clearly very ambitious. So depending on who you are, how you look at her, you can either have major respect for her or think she's an evil bitch, or you can do both, whichever.
Isn't it also funny, like during a lot of these times, it almost seemed like the last thing that you wanted to do is to be emperor or somebody big.
Absolutely.
Because there's so many backstabbers and everybody's kind of out to position themselves. So man, it almost seems like whenever I'm reading stuff like this, it's always a shit show.
Oh, totally. I would be horrified to be born into this and find out that I've got to be king or an emperor. Fuck me.
Who
You
are gonna
know?
crown you king? Like, I'm good, man.
I'm
How
all
about I
right.
just be a regional governor
Yeah.
over here somewhere? You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Can I just like lead up the library? Like I would just be like something little. Can I just be the leader of something small and then somebody else take over? I'm cool. Like I don't need that. But yeah, I don't get it. But everybody was killing everybody to be the next one on the throne, and then they die. It's like, hello, you didn't think that wasn't gonna happen to you, you dumbass. You're the one that killed the other person. So I find it hysterical that they were so thirsty for this that they would kill and then actually end up, of course, being killed too for somebody else who was them before. So across the history books of ancient Rome, some of the most interesting people turned up in the Roman Empire, but in its long-spanning history, few have made an impression quite like Locusta. We don't know much about Locusta's early days. Her name ends of Gaul, so she must have been from there at some point. Most sources say she was a peasant woman from the dark side of the Alps in present-day France. The assumption she gained her extensive knowledge of hemlock is well known by her Gaelic barbarian ancestors. Somehow she made her way to Rome in the 1st century CE, carrying with her a knowledge of herbs so deadly it was coveted by the ambitious and unscrupulous. Herb knowledge was not unusual. In fact, most villages that could not afford Greek doctors had a wise woman to brew tisanes, I don't know, and potions to cure their ills. Any herb woman worth her salt would know what plants were harmful and what plants weren't. But where most herb women use this knowledge as what not to give their patients, Locusta embraced the harmful ones and left the healing plants for her counterparts. It is not known when or why Locusta decided to use her knowledge for harm, but she joined Canidia and Martina in the infamous trio of female poisoners of Roman times.
She's so sweet. So once settled in her new home of Rome, already entrenched in the world of botany and plant-based healing, Locusta began focusing on how best to produce potions that were aimed at in producing agony and death. Enthralled by the bloody gladiator fights that had overtaken Rome at the time, she soon became obsessed with the act, sometimes watching the famously violent event for days at a time. Not before long, Locusta had taken her herbal knowledge and twisted it to meet her new worldview, dedicating her time to concocting potions that brought about death. As well as poisoning those who displeased her, Locusta was sought out by individuals for the same means, helping them do away with their enemies. Formerly known as Locusta of Gaul, her old hometown, she quickly became known as a hardcore, all-natural, free-range organic chemist assassin. Sorry, that's just reminding me like free-range eggs, but,
Yeah.
but assassins. So nefariously good at using biological sciences for evil that she was then known to the people of her city simply as Locusta the Poisoner. Utilizing everything from mushrooms to human blood, Locusta tested her dark concoctions on animals, to ensure their potency in her constant quest for the perfect toxins. It wasn't long before she realized the best applications of this would be to become a hitman, crafting herself a fortune by helping the corrupt asshole aristocrats of Rome destroy their corrupt asshole Roman aristocrats. Too much Disney. Aristocrats. Jesus. Aristocrats. Earning a name for herself as a master poisoner, Locusta turned Rome into her own personal Jonestown and made some of the most powerful men in the city chug Drano-like potions from a beer pong until they barfed to death. I'm sure that's the technical way it happened. As a hardcore killer for hire, making money hand over mortar and pestle, the diabolical assassiness offered dozens of varieties of painful death, utilizing things like hemlock, belladonna, nightshade, arsenic, quinine, and possibly even cyanide and opium overdoses to surreptitiously and prematurely end the lives of the most powerful men in the city.
What?
No, it's just kind of that rant. But Locusta was arrested twice for murder, but both times she was bailed out when powerful Roman senators flexed their political muscle to get her exonerated of the charges.
Sorry.
Presumably, they did this in exchange for her future services, or because they just needed to save themselves from being implicated in murder investigations. But either way, she was apparently like the ancient Roman Kaiser, so say. The third time Locusta was tossed in jail was a little bit different. It was 54 AD, and the woman who came to bail her out was none other than the Empress Julia Agrippina. Agrippina pulled her out of jail and tasked her with one of the most high-profile hits of her career to kill the Emperor Claudius himself. Given the go-ahead by Julia, Locusta set about poisoning both Claudius and his bodyguard, making it all but impossible for medical professionals to save their life. And here goes something else. Isn't this also something that you have to take into consideration? Like, whenever you have people like this who have knowledge of poisons and all of that, it's almost like, shouldn't you just feel a pain in your gut that they could use that same stuff to take you out? It's just almost one of those things where the anxiety level,
Totally.
of just being treacherous has to be off the charts. But yeah, it's just, man.
Yeah, every time I had a stomach ache, I'd be freaking out. What if oh shit. The murder of Claudius. Here's how it went down. The poisoner put her plan into motion. The night before, she poisoned Claudius's bodyguard just enough that the guy had to call out sick with explosive barf and diarrhea. I hate when that happens. Which I'm shocked she didn't just kill him. Then she bribed Claudius's food taster to take the night off, leaving nothing in the way of Emperor Claudius wolfing down a delicious bowl of amazing stew that, oh yeah, just so happened to be spiced up with super poisonous death cap mushrooms. But this poison was not meant to kill him. Claudius fell out of his throne, clutching his neck, and Agrippina rushed to her husband's side and to aid him in throwing up, which was what assumed, because they assume, okay, he's poisoned, and that was the thing that they did, was they would rush over and, force him to throw up. The method that they used was sticking a feather down the emperor's throat until he barfed up whatever was making him sick. It didn't work. Locusta had already soaked the feather in strychnine and paint thinner. This was the lethal dose that killed the emperor, all while to everyone else she appered to be helping.
Oh,
Is
man,
it bad that I kind of admire the
That's
ingenuity
pretty
here?
freaking brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely.
We should make a movie about this. They probably have.
I know. I'm shocked. I thought, well, maybe we can watch a documentary. I am shocked. There is nothing about this lady out there. Nothing.
Isn't. I looked as well, and I was like, wow, I was even kind of scoured through YouTube.
Yeah.
And the videos that I saw were like 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Like, she was like, I don't know, maybe purposefully she's been someone who they're trying to keep out of history. I don't know.
I don't want anyone to learn from her. So Agrippina's son, Claudius's nephew, who he adopted, Nero, who you probably heard of before, was then crowned emperor. Afterwards, life went on for a while until Agrippina threw Locusta under the bus and accused her of poisoning her husband. What a bitch!
I know.
Had her arrested and sentenced to death by bludgeoning, which came as kind of a surprise to Locusta, who was actually expecting to be rewarded in exchange for murdering the Emperor of Rome on the orders of the Empress. Total plot twist. Right before her execution was scheduled to happen, Nero decided he might have some use for a woman who secretly assassinates anyone in Rome at the snap of his fingers. So, in 55 AD, Emperor Nero freed Locusta, the prisoner, from prison, gave her a ton of money and a huge plot of land, made her an aristocrat, and publicly declared that she'd be absolved of all crimes she had committed and will ever commit. That's badass. Mm-hmm. How could that possibly come back and bite him?
Now, Nero's first job for Locusta was his half-brother, Britannicus, who was technically still eligible to be emperor. So unfortunately for her, the first attempt failed, and Nero personally beat Locusta for her inadequate skills. Britannicus was made only ill and quickly recovered. Locusta promised Nero the second attempt would work. Getting the poison into Britannicus was a difficult part. Though young, he knew better than to just trust anything that he ate or drank, and always had a taster check the food and drink first. Nero knew this, and one evening, a large dinner party, he had Britannicus's wine diluted with too hot of water. It was fairly common in Rome at the time to add hot water to wine to warm it, and Britannicus's food taster had in fact checked the hot wine before giving it to the young man, not thinking Britannicus had a cold water added to the wine to cool it down, but did not have the taster check the wine again. Locusta's poison was in the cold water, and just as Nero planned, his brother drank down the toxin. Britannicus fell to the floor, writhing in pain, but he was also known to suffer from epilepsy, a somewhat common ailment in the inbred imperial family, and so Nero forbade anyone from helping him. The seizure would, after all, pass in time, and trying to stop it would be fruitless. Nero had Britannicus's guards take the young man to his personal quarters, where he died just a few hours later. Nero was quite pleased, but his mother, Agrippina, had not been in on the plot, was shocked. She knew right away what her son had done and who had helped him.
The next day, Nero rewarded Locusta the poisoner with a big villa atop a hill in downtown Rome and declared her the official imperial poisoner. What a title. Locusta was probably also the person behind the attempted assassination by poison of Julia Agrippina. Revenge is the best dish served cold and laced with cyanide, I guess. But Agrippina was fucking awesome and had already made herself immune to most kinds of poison. She is an interesting character. If you guys ever want to read up on her, she's something else. Anyway, for the next 13 years, which holy shit, I cannot believe she got away with that for 14 years. Locusta the poisoner not only performed risk-free assassinations on behalf of one of Rome's most ruthless emperors, she also opened up a school where she trained other women in the fine arts of making unsuspected dumbasses huff Clorox until they bleed out their eyes and nose. Living in a huge palace, she trained future poisoners such as the infamous Martina, the woman associated with the death of Germanicus, and many others. She also continued her studies of chemistry and biology, learning new formulas and testing them out at the emperor's request on convicted criminals, slaves, and anyone else she wanted.
Lovely. So Nero's reign was not to be a long one. When the disgraced emperor fled Rome, he stopped at Locusta's estate and had her brew him a poison that would let him commit suicide painlessly. In his hurry to escape his assassins, he forgot to pack it in his luggage, so instead he had to do it the old school way and kill himself with a knife. Boo, boo, boo. His successor, the Emperor Galba, was a little bitter about all the poisoning bullshit and captured Locusta. When it came time for Locusta to pay for her sins, it was said that she was ordered by the Senate to be publicly raped by a specially trained giraffe and then torn apart by wild animals in the Colosseum as entertainment for the guests in the halftime show. Or she was to be dragged through the streets in chains and beheaded. There were conflicting accounts, all from different historians. It was not uncommon for women to be raped by animals for punishment and entertainment. Usually, to end their suffering, all the wild animals were then released from their cages to tear the criminal or slave apart. The reasoning behind this sickening entertainment was to reenact Greek or Roman myths. In particular, the animal rapes involved Zeus, who in the legends liked to take the form of various animals before having his way with women. The jackass and giraffe rapes were saved for slaves or anyone who had committed truly heinous crimes in Rome.
You know what? My money is on she was dragged through the streets and beheaded.
I did a lot of research on this, and there are two very, very different sides of this who believe that that she was raped by the giraffe, and the reasoning behind it makes sense to me on why they think that way, but then the reasoning behind the other one, because she wasn't the only one arrested by Galba. The entire crew of Nero was arrested. The men in that crew were dragged through the streets in chains and beheaded. But they think some think that was the same fate as Locusta, but others read a story by a man who was, I can't remember his name, but he was he was involved. He was there, and he was like kind of one of the guys telling the story. Tells a story about this happening to her. So you've got two sides of the fence. I don't really know which one it is. I think they're both pretty good, badass.
The reason why I lean towards Drag to the Streets and Beheaded is when you talk about a lack of information behind this person, but also it can't just be one dude who wrote that, you know what I mean? Or a couple dudes. Like, and granted, I don't know what the literacy rates and how many people could write, but if people witnessed her getting raped, there would have been a shitload of people writing about that. Like, I just don't see, a couple of dudes mentioned it. I don't know.
Like the diary entry, I saw the most interesting thing last night.
Yeah. And also, we know as far, the more time that goes past, more stink and more funk and more shit gets put on stories, as well. So I think that there's a lot of that here as well.
I can totally agree with that. But I do know that lots of people in those days were raped by animals, and it wasn't that uncommon. And so it might have, this wasn't a big deal to them. Like, they saw this shit all the time. So not many people are going to be like, whoa, I saw the craziest shit.
This person.
I mean, the shit they did in those Coliseums, I was reading about it. I mean, this was just one of the crazy things that they did in there. They would murder like 150 animals a day sometimes just for fun. I mean, it was fucked up with the shit they did in there.
But I don't, you see a woman getting fucked by a fucking giraffe, that's just not something you're like, oh man, that was Tuesday. You know what I mean?
But they had giraffes and they had donkeys.
Back in those days, though, you see a man fighting a lion and a woman getting fucked by a giraffe.
Yeah.
That's kind of how that works.
They even described it. They said that they would take the woman giraffe when she was in heat, the scent, and they would put it, and they were even describing how they do it. And there's like paintings of it, and there's not a painting of her being raped by a giraffe, but there is. So that's why I was like, is that really like her punishment? But no, this was the halftime entertainment between gladiators. They used to do this shit all the time. So that's why I was kind of like, in theory, it could be possible because it wasn't a big deal to them. But again, you just because it wasn't a big deal doesn't mean she had that happen to her. So it's kind of, I don't know. That's why I gave them both.
And plus, there were a lot of people who died under her hand. But do y'all happen to know, like, as far as people who went to the Coliseum, was everybody invited to the Coliseum? Were like just common people, broke people, rich people?
Everybody.
It's like that's rich people. That's not rich people entertainment?
They had sections. They did sections. Okay. So they had
just like we do now for concerts.
Yep. They had VIP. They had government sections. They had, of course, the emperor was up on a little stage platform with his people, and then they had around him was the government, and then they had the front rows were like for the wealthy, and then they had like a stadium seats for the poor and the lower classes, and they would give them bread. I mean, this was a big deal when they had these shows because they would get food. They would give them food. And they were hungry, so they'd show up, they're starving, they're getting bread thrown at them and drinks and wine.
And if they were really unlucky, they were put into the arena with the animals.
And they would
peasants.
Yep, they would capture slaves from people and put them in there and make them fight animals. Even like the people that owned the slaves didn't even know. I mean, it wasn't like they volunteered their slaves. Slaves were freaking expensive. But if they were desperate and they didn't have enough people for that day of entertainment, they would just go on the streets and pull slaves off the streets that were doing, errands for people and just throw them in a pit. Nice. So, and there's nothing those people could do about it. They had to go either couldn't have a slave anymore, or had to go buy a new one. It was crazy. And there are only so many. So then they talk about how they started prosecuting people for the littlest things because they were desperate for entertainment. Like they were like, oh, you stole a piece of bread, you're going to go in the pit and die by a lion. It was just crazy. And they wouldn't even give them a trial. It was just, they were desperate for people to kill. So it was fucked up.
What you're saying is Netflix saves lives because we have ways to entertain ourselves now.
Exactly. I don't know. I mean, like, it was crazy to read all this. And I've seen Gladiator and I've seen all those movies, but it doesn't do it justice. When I've read, the PBS special was pretty good. About this, and then I kind of went down a rabbit hole, I think what you did with Black Dahlia, because I'm like, no way could this have happened. And then I would click on a story and click on a story, and it got crazier and crazier. And I'm like, holy shit, this place was fucked up. And
I want her dragged through the streets because I want it to be like Game of Thrones,
Yeah.
where they take Cersei Lannister and they're like, shame, shame. That's what I want to happen to her. So,
well, anyway, she died, so better, very, very well deserved. Whatever the fuck happened to her, she died, and that was probably for the best. It's estimated that she killed thousands of people in her lifetime. I don't know if that's true. Once she had Nero's approval and officially the imperial poisoner, that was basically a free pass to do whatever the fuck she wanted, and she really did do what the fuck she wanted for a good 14 years. And when she starts teaching other people, it might not have been her poisoning them, but somebody from her, training did. So they kind of also count those as her murders because she trained these people how to do it. And of course they turned around and practiced and did their own thing with whatever the hell she taught them. So kind of like a pyramid scheme, but with poison. So that's the story of Locusta. So
another feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another feel good. I think we it's always kind of cool to just know that all bullshit isn't just happening now. It's been going on seemingly forever.
Yep. And if I just wanted to also say before we move on to what we're going to discuss next week, if you enjoy the show, if you wouldn't mind giving us a quick review on iTunes or or follow us, subscribe, or follow us on Podbean or iTunes, that would be fantastic. We're always looking for reviews, and we appreciate any feedback. I know it's not always going to be great. That's okay. Helps us make the show better. So we appreciate that.
Okay. So you guys want me to surprise you what we're going to talk about next week?
Yes, please. I'm excited.
Oh, no. We're going to talk about the movie Overlord. It was released recently on digital. I think it comes out on Blu-ray at the end of February. It's basically a Nazi zombie movie. It was directed by J.J. Abrams, and I watched it and I really did enjoy it. So we'll kind of break down what was in that, in addition to maybe give some recommendations on other movies that we have seen that have Nazi zombies in it. There appears to be a handful that a lot of people seem to. I'm not going to say that they like all of them, but whenever I did a search for the highly rated Nazi zombie movies, there's about 5 or 6 that keep on coming up in the queue.
No.
So, yeah. So there's a few people who gave it a try. But Overlord was actually a movie. I checked it out. Once again, I enjoyed it. It was actually a lot better than I thought. And even though you could say that it's considered kind of they did it on purpose to kind of make it like a B movie, but it's even better than a B movie. So we'll get into it next week. Uh-oh.
Sorry,
what was that?
That was an accident. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, but we'll get into that, and of course, in the coming week there might be other horror news that are coming up, so we'll get into that in our weird news section. But I just figured the theme for next week is going to be zombies and Nazi zombies. And actually, Moni, you said that you're still hanging in there with The Walking Dead, right?
I saw that Tanaya Guerrera is exiting the show. I don't know what they're going to do because they really set her up to take over the show. And just like this season, that show sucks. And I'm out. My husband's like, it comes back tonight. I'm like, and? So cold.
Hey, listen,
but this is what they get for trying to milk or beat a dead horse. Basically, is you didn't get an end date so it could have a really nice ending that was satisfying to all the fans, and instead you made it run so long that the actors rightfully wanted to do something else with their lives, and now here we are.
Well, I think, in addition, I didn't know, because I think I've been Walking Dead free a couple of seasons now, and I think I stopped after season 6, but I found out when kind of reading the information on Denai that apparently her and Rick had a fucking kid or some
Yeah,
shit.
they had a kid. They flashed forward 5 years. Now she's running a community herself. She's got some kind of mysterious like carving in her that we're supposed to get the backstory on. I mean, they really set her up, her and Daryl basically, to be the main characters. And now she's leaving. So
wow, I can't believe she had a kid with the same guy a few seasons before that was hanging her ass out to dry for them to fucking kill. And then they had the nerve to like write her character being totally cool with it. Yeah, that's
options.
just that's so corny. But anyway, go get that money, girl, because there's better waters to be swimming in than on the AMC apparently. Yeah, but that's all I've got, and you can follow me on Twitter at militant_marker.
Moni?
I am Rebel Moni on Twitter and Moni Bear on Instagram. And I've been watching a lot of creepy stuff too, so come see what I recommend.
I am Creepin' at Christy on Instagram and the Creepin_it on Twitter. And you can also find us on Facebook. We got a good community going on there, and lots of the people that listen come on and share with us some funny stuff, funny memes, and we have a good time. So with that, I bid all of you an adieu, and I'm excited about next week. Hopefully, we're going to have a little bit of a weird way of having to fit our shows in, so it might be a little bit off of our normal postings, but Yardley's going to be kicking it, and Mardi Gras, and Moni's doing cool stuff, and I'm over here being boring as hell. So anyway, everyone, creep.
That's still a couple of weeks away. We'll get it together.
Yeah, we'll fit. We're gonna fit them in. It just might be a little bit off. But I've been kind of off anyway, so I don't think it won't be anything too dramatic. So, with all of that, I hope you and guys enjoy the rest of your day and creep it real.
I seek you out, flay you alive. One more word and you won't survive. And I'm not scared of your stolen power. See right through you any hour. I won't soothe your pain. I won't ease your strain. You'll be waiting in vain. I got nothing for you to gain. I'm taking it slow, feeding my flame, shoveling the cards of